In this module, we will be talking about alkali metal spectra. We've already learnt about hydrogen atom, and now we move on to multi-electron atoms. What we propose to learn from this module, a brief introduction will be given, and we'll move on to multi-electron atoms. We'll discuss the electron orbitals and then move on to alkali metal spectra, because that is the simplest multi-electron system where you have one electron in the outermost orbital, and we'll wind up with a summary. You will study about the failures of the Bohr theory, why you needed better theories, and this led to the formulation of the quantum theory. You will understand how the new theory could explain the fine structure in the spectra of hydrogen and hydrogen-like ions. You remember we could not explain the fine structure, the double lines in the hydrogen-like spectra, and this can be explained by the new theory, and how this theory can be extended to atoms which have a single electron in their outermost shell, that is the alkali metal atoms. You should also be able to write the term symbols for simple one electron systems. So first we begin with a brief introduction. Bohr's model could only explain the line spectra of hydrogen and hydrogen-like ions. However, it did not even attempt to explain the spectra of multi-electron atoms. Even in the case of hydrogen atom, higher resolution showed that each line is split into a doublet, which the Bohr theory was clearly unable to explain. Clearly, the Bohr theory was inadequate and a better universally applicable theory was required. So, moving on to multi-electron atoms, the problem with multi-electron atoms is that not only are there several electrons getting attracted to the same nucleus, they are repelling each other as well. That is, you have many electrons and they are getting attracted to the same nucleus because the atoms have only one nucleus, but the electrons, because they have similar charge, they are repelling each other as well. This repulsion is much harder to deal with. But the worst failure was that electrons just weren't little charged particles flying around in trajectories as Bohr assumed. Remember that Bohr had assumed that there are along which the electrons are moving and they are charged particles, and the problem was that we have realized that these are actually waves. So it is very difficult to explain how the electrons are behaving in atoms. Now this was first recognized by Louis de Broglie, who first formulated the wavelength equation for matter waves, that is lambda, the wavelength, is equal to h Planck's constant divided by p, the angular momentum. Now coming to electron orbitals, electron waves like light waves have nodes, but while light is in constant motion, it has a speed of c, electrons trapped in atoms are stationary waves with fixed nodal patterns, and how this was explained by Schrodinger equation. Now in the Schrodinger equation, it takes care of both things, that the electrons can behave as particles as well as waves, and he put both particle and wave terms in the same equation, and this came to be known as the Schrodinger wave equation. Solving the equation leads to wave functions and their energies. The wave function gives the shape of the electronic orbital. We are not talking about orbits now, we are talking about orbitals. Orbits in space in which the electrons were moving, and now we are talking about orbitals which are smeared out in space. The square of the wave function gives a probability of finding the electron at a particular place, that is, it gives the electron density for the atom. And this figure shows you how the electron density is smeared. There are regions where it is dense, and then moving outwards it becomes less and less dense, and this is what could be an s orbital because the shape is roughly spherical. Schrodinger's equation requires 3 quantum numbers. Now when you solve the Schrodinger equation for the hydrogen atom, you get 3 quantum numbers. The first one is the principal quantum number, which is given a symbol of n. This is the same integer that you got in the Rydberg equation, and this governs the bulk of all electron energy by being 1 more than the number of nodal surfaces in the wave. Now why should that influence energy? Because more nodes mean shorter wavelengths, and shorter wavelengths mean bigger momenta according to de Broglie, and bigger momenta mean bigger kinetic energies. So the number of nodes governs the energy. Larger the number of nodes, larger is the energy of the particle. And since the number of nodes is n minus 1, the smallest n is equal to 1 implies the fewest nodes possible, that is 0. But where are these nodes? To begin with, they are radial surfaces within the electron matter wave centered on the nucleus, where the wave has 0 amplitude. So wherever the wave has zero amplitude, it means that there is a node there. Now when n is equal to 3, in that case there are two nodes because n minus 1 is equal to 2, and these are spherical nodes. N is equal to 1, there is no node because n minus 1 is equal to 0, and that matter wave just dies out as one moves away from the nucleus. It does not have a node anywhere, it simply dies out as you go to higher radii. As n becomes larger, the atom becomes larger and the electron goes further from the nucleus. Now this is how we have shown. You can see from the figure that the 1s orbital does not have a node. Everywhere the wave function has the same sign, blue, and at the bottom we have plotted what are known as the radial probability distribution, and you see that there is a single point where it is maximum and then it dies out. In the second figure, this is for the 2s orbital, you find that there is a white circle, which means that this is a node where the wave function is equal to 0. The blue part is the part where the wave function is positive, and the yellowish color is for the part where it is negative. So between blue and yellow there is a circle where it is equal to 0, and this is shown as white. For the 3s orbital, you find that there are two radial nodes because n minus 1 is equal to 2. You have a blue portion, a yellowish portion, again white, and then a blue portion, and you can see at the bottom also that there are 3 maxima, and this is because of the 3 different regions that these nodes have made. So this is what we mean by nodes, that as the orbital keeps on increasing, the quantum number n keeps on increasing, the number of nodes keeps on increasing. Then the second quantum number that came from the solution of the Schrodinger equation was the L quantum number, and it is called the angular quantum number also. Now we were talking about nodes which were in spheres. Now can they be in planes also? Then you would have angular nodes because you won't see them moving away from the nucleus but rather around it. Since nodes have to be either spherical or angular, we get a second quantum number L, which is the number of these n minus 1 nodes that are angular. Up till now we were talking about spherical nodes. We are now coming to angular nodes also, and you see that there is another quantum number L which describes them. Since we can't have more angular modes than there were nodes in the first place, L can never exceed n minus 1 because that is the total number of nodes. So L, the maximum value, is equal to n minus 1. But it can take on any integer value from 0 because n, the smallest value, was equal to 1. So L can take on a value equal to 0 and go on up till n minus 1, that all the number of angular modes can be from none to all of them can be angular nodes. In that case there won't be any spherical nodes. The third quantum number that we come across is the magnetic quantum number, and this is given the symbol ml. This small l means that it is related to the angular momentum. Now when you look at the detailed geometry of the angles at which the nodes lie, and you find that it is determined by another quantum number. This is given the symbol ml, and it is also called the magnetic quantum number because it gives the direction that the electron's angular momentum points. The angular momentum, you remember, is a vector quantity, so the direction in which it points is also very, very important. This quantum number gives us this direction. Revolving charges, an electron with angular momentum about the nucleus, that is why it has an angular momentum, because it is revolving around the nucleus. It generates magnetic fields. Remember, Maxwell's equation said that if you have a charged particle and it moves, then it gives rise to magnetic fields, and their direction can have two values: up, which is given as plus, or it can be down, which is given a minus value, or it can also be perpendicular to some external magnetic field, in which case it is 0, and all of them would be different energetically. That means it is the same as if you have two bar magnets near one another, you can feel their attraction and you can feel their repulsions. Now this is shown that suppose L is equal to 2, these are the possible directions that the ML can take. It can either be, and you have a magnetic field, in one particular direction, vertical direction that we have shown. These blue arrows show possible values in which the angular momentum can point, and this gives rise to different ml values, which are 2, 1, 0 when it is perpendicular, -1 when it is pointing down, -2 when it is pointing down at some other angle. Now ml is actually the quantized shadow or projection of the electron's angular momentum L along that imaginary electric external magnetic field. In a vector sense, ml is L's component along that direction. When you have an external magnetic field, the direction that L makes with that external magnetic field is given by ml. Since the component can never be larger than its vector, ml never exceeds L. That means that the maximum value of ml can only be L and never projects more negative than -L. So the minimum value will be -L. If you count from L to -L, all the integers are equal to 2L plus 1 because you also have a 0. So the possible values of ml are from -L to +L, and there are 2L plus 1 such values. Let us look at what are the possible values for n, L and ml up to n is equal to 4. The orbitals with L is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3 etc. are called s, p, d and f orbitals. Now this notation also came from spectroscopy. The principal quantum number you write down before the orbital. So if you write down 3d, it means that the n quantum number is equal to 3 and L is equal to 2, because if you look at s, p, d, the L is equal to 2 value corresponds to t. And now this refers to an orbital for which n is equal to 3 and L is equal to 2. And the possible values of ml are 2L plus 1, and these are from -2, -1, 0, 1 and 2. And this is a table that shows you what are the possible values for n is equal to 1, 2, 3 and 4, and these are the possible orbitals and their designations that are possible, the number of orbitals in the subshell and the number of orientations in a shell, and this is the possible number of quantum numbers. Now let us discuss a one electron system. This is the possible energy level diagram. The smallest value of n is equal to 1, and for that L can only have a value equal to 0. So you have only one orbital, and this is called 1s, and this is the lowest energy. If you remember, we said smaller values of n have lower energy because the number of nodes is less. One should try to correlate conceptually with the number of nodes, because this tells us why n is equal to 1 has the lowest energy. Now when n is equal to 2, then L can only have a value of 0 or 1. When L is equal to 0, we call it a 2s orbital, and there is only one orientation because 2L plus 1 is equal to 1 since L is equal to 0. The other possible value of L is equal to 1, and you have the 2p orbital, and the number of possible orientations is equal to 2 into 1 plus 1, that is 3. So you have 3 2p orbitals, and this is higher in energy to the 1s orbital. And both the 2s and 2p orbitals for a single electron system are of the same energy, because the energy does not depend upon L, it depends only on n. Remember the Rydberg's formula, it depends only on n. Similarly, when you go on to n is equal to 3, L can have 0, that means it can be a 3s orbital. L can have a value equal to 1, in which case you have a 3p orbital, and L is equal to 2, in which case you also have the 3d orbitals, and the number of such orbitals is equal to 5, 2 into 2 plus 1, and you have 5 3d orbitals. Moving on to 4, you will find that you have 4s, 4p, 4d and also 4f orbitals, and we won't go beyond that because the periodic table. Now you find that many of these orbitals have the same energy, 2s and 2p, they have the same energy. 3s, 3p and 3d also have the same energy, and such orbitals which have the same energy are said to be degenerate. Now for multi-electron atoms, the s and p orbitals are no longer degenerate, and this is a very important thing to remember. For the hydrogen atom or hydrogen-like ions, all the 2s and 2p orbitals have the same energy, and so they are degenerate. But when you come to multi-electron atoms, the same does not hold true, and s and p orbitals have different energies, and this is because you have more than one electron and these electrons will interact with each other. Now this is the figure which shows that the s electrons penetrate more to the nucleus, that is they are able to reach the nucleus, and you will see this, the small blue peak is closer to the nucleus, and this is for the 3s orbital, it is closer to the nucleus. For the 3p orbital you find that the peak is not as close to the nucleus, and that means that they feel the electron attraction of the nucleus less than the 3s electrons. And the same thing you can say for 3d electrons, we do not have any node, and you find that the green, that dark green peak is away from the nucleus compared to the 3s and 3p orbitals. So we can say that s orbitals, because they are able to reach closer to the nucleus, it does not matter that the peak is smaller, but they have a possibility of reaching closer to the nucleus, and that is why they have lesser energy, because they are attracted more to the nucleus, and you have a Coulombic attraction which lowers their energy. 3p has higher energy and 3d has still higher energy. So the same n is equal to 3 values will for different values of L will have different energies, and the orbitals are not degenerate. And now the Aufbau diagram is the one which decides how we fill up the electrons, and for many electron systems you find that it is different. 1s is singly degenerate, 2s has lower energy as compared to 2p, then you have 3s, 3p, and then you have 4s, 3d, 4p. It depends a lot on how the attraction to the nucleus is there, and this is the Aufbau diagram which governs how the electrons are filled up, starting with the lowest energy orbitals, and we keep on going up until we have filled up all the electrons that are there in a particular atom. Now coming to electron spin, up till now we have not come across any quantum number relating to spin. We had the n quantum number, the principal quantum number, you have the angular quantum number, the L quantum number, you also had the ML quantum number which governed the orbital angular momentum's direction in space, but the Schrodinger equation gives you only these 3 quantum numbers. But later experiments showed that there is something lacking in the Schrodinger equation, and it is not able to explain the line spectra of many electron atoms. When you look at the line spectra of these atoms, you find that each line is actually a closely spaced pair of lines. If you look at higher resolution, you will see that one line that appeared to be a single line is actually consisting of 2 lines, and that is why Samuel Goudsmit and George Uhlenbeck in Holland proposed that the electron must have an intrinsic angular momentum and therefore a magnetic moment, and this they said in 1925. In order to explain the experimental data, they proposed that the electron must have an intrinsic spin quantum number which they called as S, and this can have a value equal to half. And similar to the L quantum number, the number of possible values of S of ms, the quantum number which describes its direction in space, is 2s plus 1, and this becomes equal to 2. For a single electron, S can have only one value which is half, but ms can have values from minus half to plus half, that means a total of 2 values. Now this was just a proposal. Stern and Gerlach designed an experiment to verify this. A beam of atoms was passed through a slit and into a magnetic field, and the atoms were then detected. Almost half the atoms were deflected in one direction and the other half in an opposite direction. See, they were not randomly oriented, they deflected in only 2 directions, down and one up, and approximately half were in one direction and the other half were in the other direction. And this led to the conclusion that half the electrons are spinning in one direction and the other half are spinning in the opposite direction. We know this is not absolutely correct, but this is like a bar magnet. Half of them are spinning in one direction clockwise and the other half is spinning in the anti-clockwise direction. You do not have a classical analog of spin, so this is an easy way to understand spin, although it is not strictly correct. Coming to the alkali metal spectra, Alkali metal atoms have formally the same electron configuration as a hydrogen atom. Hydrogen atom's electron configuration is 1s1, but alkali metal spectra are governed by the n quantum number. It can be ns1 and they should display similar spectra. Only the n quantum number is different for the different alkali metals. For example, for 2s1 you have lithium atom, 3s1 you have the sodium atom and potassium and so on. All the alkali metals will have different values of n, but they only have one electron in the outermost shell, and that is an s electron. The inner electrons are all paired and do not contribute to the angular momentum. So we only look at the outermost unpaired electron, which is similar to the electron configuration of hydrogen. The selection rules for the transitions are delta n is equal to anything, it can have any value, but delta L can only have values equal to plus minus 1, and delta M can have values equal to 0 and plus minus 1. We have already discussed the selection rules to some extent, and these are described by actually quantum mechanical calculations, but we will try to understand them in a simple way. The delta ML selection rule is the only one that is new here, and you only see it when there is an external magnetic field, and in that case the lines are split into the various ML components. Otherwise all the 2p orbitals have the same energy. The energy changes only when you have a magnetic field, because the electrons can either be aligned with the magnetic field or maybe in an opposite direction, and so you have different energies when you have an external magnetic field, and this is called Zeeman effect. The same kind of effect is seen in an electric field and you call it the Stark effect, but we will talk about the Zeeman effect here. If there is no external field, magnetic or electric, the different ML values are degenerate. All the 2p orbitals have the same energy, the 3d orbitals have the same energy. The delta L is equal to plus minus 1 selection rule means that you can have transitions from S to P or from P to S, D to P and F to D in emission spectra. I said that these S, P, D and F notations had come from spectra. Now this is what they denote. S stands for sharp, P for principal, D for diffuse and fundamental for F, and so you have these numbers S, P, D and F because this is how they appeared when the spectra were observed, and these are the notations for the atomic orbitals and they came from these labels. The possible transitions for an atom are usually depicted in the form of a Grotrian diagram, which is shown in figure for sodium. If you look at the spectrum, all the transitions from S to P are allowed, P to S are allowed, and these are the possible transitions that can take place for sodium. So we may now understand the splitting of spectral lines in the hydrogen spectrum. Remember, this was the failure of the Bohr theory. Since both the orbital angular momentum, which is represented by L, and spin angular momentum, which is represented by S, these are vector quantities. So vectors, as you know, can either be in the same direction, they can add up, or they can be in opposite direction, in which case they will subtract from each other, and we call it the coupling of angular momenta with the spin angular momenta, and this gives rise to a total angular momentum, and which is represented by another quantum number J. The vector J is equal to the vector L plus the vector S. For example, for the 1s electron, you have L is equal to 0 because for S L is equal to 0, and the S quantum number has a value of half for a single electron. So that means J is equal to L plus S, and that J is equal to half. Now this is the same as the spin quantum number, that means it is entirely due to the spin angular momentum. And the selection rules were delta n, there is no restriction on delta n, and delta L can only take on plus or minus 1 values. The first allowed transition from 1s is to the 2p orbital. So 1s cannot go anywhere else, it can go to the 2p orbital. Of course, it can go to the 3p orbital also, but the lowest energy transition is the 1s to 2p transition. For this, L is equal to 1, S is equal to half, and the angular momentum may couple in two ways. The possible values of the J quantum number are then J is equal to L plus S, and keep on subtracting 1 until you get L minus S. This is how we do vector addition if you take the quantum numbers corresponding to L, when you write down L plus S for J, you can add L plus S, that means 1 plus half, this gives you 3 by 2, and keep on subtracting 1 until you reach 1 minus half, which is half. In this case, when you subtract 3 by 2 minus 1, you get half. So, there are only two possible values, one is 3 by 2 and the other is half. So, J can take on two values, 3 by 2 and half. The two states have slightly different values of the energies, and hence the splitting of lines in the spectrum is readily explained, because J can have two values, half or 3 by 2, and a transition from 1s to 2p can be split into two lines, one ending at J is equal to half and the other one is equal to J is equal to 3 by 2, and this is called spin orbit coupling, and this explains the fine structure, the splitting of lines in the hydrogen and hydrogen like ion spectra. In the case of hydrogen, it was not observed in Bohr's time because the splitting is very small, and at that time the spectrometers were not very good. But when we had better resolving power spectrometers, it became obvious that there is a splitting of lines. And this splitting is more observed in the case of the sodium atom, because it increases as the n quantum number increases. And for sodium, you remember there are two lines, D1 and D2 spectral lines, and these are separated by 17.2 centimeter inverse. And in the case of hydrogen, it is only 0.243 centimeter inverse, and that is why it is not observed so readily. And cesium, it increases because the n quantum number has increased to 554.1 centimeter inverse. So, you see that the splitting of lines increases as the n quantum number increases. So, it is not so obvious in the case of hydrogen and hydrogen like ions, but it keeps on increasing, and for cesium there is a considerable splitting in the lines. Now, just as for the L and S quantum numbers, each value of J is also associated with 2J plus 1 values of what is called Mj, which are degenerate in the absence of an external magnetic field. The selection rule for J is delta J is equal to 0 plus minus 1, but J is equal to 0 to 0 transition is forbidden on account of conservation of angular momentum. Why is this forbidden? When J is equal to 0, Mj is also equal to 0, and that means that the transition will not lead to any change in the angular momentum. The atom is absorbing a photon, but there is no change in the angular momentum. Now, this is against the conservation of angular momentum, so this does not happen. But when J is equal to 1, in that case Mj can have 3 values, and that is why even if J does not change, the Mj value can change and the angular momentum can be conserved. So, we now come to electronic configurations and atomic term symbols. It is very cumbersome to write down the complete electronic configuration of an atom. For example, for sodium you have to write down 1s2, 2s2, 2p6, 3s1. When we observe that the spectra generally depends only on the electron configuration which is outside, that is 3s1, and that is why sodium and potassium have similar electronic spectra. And for carbon you will have to write down 1s2, 2s2, 2p2. And as the atomic number increases, you can realize how difficult it becomes to write down the complete electron configuration. So, there is another way of writing down all the information arising from the electronic configuration without writing down the complete electronic configuration. This is given by the term symbol, in which you have 3 quantities. There is a superscript 2s plus 1. You will observe that here I have written a capital S, and capital S is the total spin. It is, we are not talking about a single electron now, we are talking about a multi-electron system. So, we are talking about capital S. Then L stands for the orbital angular momentum, again a capital L, and J again is the total angular momentum, spin plus orbital, and again it is written as a capital J, and this is a more succinct way of writing down the angular momentum coupling in an atom. Now, it contains 3 pieces of information: 2s plus 1 signifies the spin multiplicity, or simply it is also called the multiplicity, because more often it is the spin multiplicity which determines the total multiplicity of the atom, and this arises from the electron configuration. The symbol L refers to the orbital angular momentum, and the symbols used are S, P, D, F, all capital, etc. for capital L is equal to 0, 1, 2, 3. The total angular momentum is given by the symbol J, and I have already told you that these are capital letters, and we do not use lowercase letters which are used for single electrons. Now, for hydrogen, which has an electron configuration of 1s1, the total spin is half, because it is a single electron. So, capital S is also equal to half, and that is why 2s plus 1 is equal to 2, and the state is termed a doublet. All atoms with a single unpaired electrons will have S is equal to half, and they will all be doublets. Similarly, states are termed singlet when S is equal to 0, the number of possible states is equal to 2s plus 1 is equal to 1, it is called singlet. When S is equal to 1, 2s plus 1 is equal to 3, it is called a triplet. When S is equal to 3 by 2, 2s plus 1 is equal to 4, so it is called quartet, quintet, sextet, and so on. It depends on what is the value of S and what is the value of 2s plus 1. I said that normally multiplicity is determined by the spin quantum number, because usually L is smaller than S, and the multiplicity is given by 2s plus 1, and if S is smaller than L, it will be 2L plus 1, but this is rarely the case. Since the single electron is in the s orbital, L is equal to 0 and the symbol is capital S. The only possible J value is half, because 0 plus half is half, and the total term symbol for hydrogen atom in its ground state is given as 2s half. You can understand that it gives you all the information. It tells you it is a doublet, it says there is no net orbital angular momentum, the total angular momentum is equal to half. Now, alkali metals also have similar NS1 configuration. That means all electrons are paired and they do not contribute to the angular momentum, because a positive value and a negative value will cancel each other. Their term symbol is also 2s half. Now, how do I tell that I am talking about hydrogen and or sodium? We just write down the principal quantum number. For hydrogen it was 1, and so we write 1 2s half, and for sodium we will write down 3 2s half. For lithium we will write down 2 2s half. And finally, I will wind up with a brief summary of what we have learned. We have already learned about the hydrogen atom spectra, but we also said that it is not completely explained by the Bohr theory. Now we find that by invoking spin, we are able to understand the splitting of lines, and this is what we have learned in this particular module. The Bohr model could explain the coarse features of the hydrogen atomic spectrum, but it failed to explain the fine structure. The quantum theory led to the exact solution of the hydrogen atom with 3 quantum numbers. However, a 4th spin quantum number had to be introduced to explain the finer details. Coupling of the orbital and angular momentum could explain the appearance of doublets in the spectra of hydrogen and hydrogen-like ions. The splitting of lines in the alkali metal spectra could also be readily explained.